Hello, this is my tutorial on how to use Zootlab. So to get started, retrieving game assets. So the main program that I use is something called Arknights Downloader. It's linked on the Zootlab here. This. So once you download that, you download the code using the screen button, and you will get an SLN file, arknightsdownloader.sln. You open this. And at the top, there are two green buttons. Click the one that's filled in. That will compile and build the program. This will give you a blank screen. Just type in help, and you can go off from there to download the resources that you need. One thing to note though, that this will download the entirety of the game, so you're expecting to download 16 to 17 gigabytes worth of files. However, there's a second method that you could use if you have your emulator rooted. So by going to your file manager, going to storage, emulated 0, Android data, you can find your Arknights. It'll be com.yostar.en.arknights if you're using the global version of Arknights, and Billy if you're using the CN version. And the files will be in here. But anyway, back to the Arknights downloader. From the main the home directory, you'll go to bin debug net 9.0 data assets cn resources, and all of the game files will be here. To actually extract them, there's a tool called Asset Studio. It's a tool that basically decompresses Unity files, and the benefit of this one is that it also has a GUI, so you can actually view the data that you're going to use. And in releases on the right, you will want to use the Arknights Studio version 1.2.3. which released on June 29th, 2005. So once you have that open, you can open this program, and you'll be greeted with this screen. As for getting map assets, the three models of maps are stored in scenes, Unity scenes. So in the scenes folder, you'll find a OBT and activities. Activities are events, and OBT is everything that is not an event. So like main story, CC, and all of that. For example, we can go into here. We can find level main 0107. That should be stage 17. You'll find a .ab file that is the compressed assets for the game. You'll drag that into Arknights Studio GUI, and once that should load, and you'll go to assets list, and you should find at least one mesh, and these are the assets of the map. Most maps will compose of one asset, but some are split into multiple, so you'll end up using all of them. So we can pick any sort of map. Do 811, for example. So we can actually I'll try another map actually, simpler one. Alright. So we'll select all 5 of these, right click, export selected assets, and we will select the folder for them to export to. Okay, so one thing to note that these will export as OBJ files. If we're using Unity to, not Unity, Blender to make our map, we will need to use Autodesk FBX Converter to convert these OBJ files to specifically binary FBX files. Let me quickly do that. As you can see here, FBX save mode is in binary. We can convert that. We'll open Blender. Delete the default cube. And you'll be able to drag everything in. And it should, yep, it should. For all of these, you want to set the rotation to, I think, oh wait. You want to set the rotation of all pieces to 180 so that it phases up. You may notice the scale is 0.01, 0.01, 0.01, that they are very small. It doesn't matter if you normalize it to 1. You can always edit it in Unity. But anyway, so once the map is facing up, select everything, Control A, and apply rotation. You can apply the scale as well. So anyway, we have a 718 in map actually. We're gonna hit A to select all, right click, go to parent, then clear and keep transformation. This removes all the parents. Hit Control A again, hit tab. Actually, don't hit tab. Just select all, right click, set origin, and origin to geometry. This allows for every piece to be able to be manipulated quite easily. And also at the top middle of the screen, there's a snap toggle so that the tiles will snap to the grid, making them much easier to work with. But anyway, to work with these, I recommend you use Shift D to duplicate objects instead of using Control C, Control V. This will be relevant in a bit. Alright, we're on the texturing part of the tutorial now. So you'll have your map here. And we'll go back to the game assets, and in resources, go to arts, then go to maps, and then everything you see here are they contain the tile set textures for every tile set. So in the case of it's a bit of trial and error to find which one you want. But anyway, this one is 718, so it's a chapter 7 map. And the corresponding tile set for that, it's called map qcity underscore core. There's a resource.ab file, or res.ap in this case. We take that and you want to drag it into here, into Arknights Studio, and you'll find a lot of texture 2Ds. So grab all of them, export, send them wherever, and copy that path to wherever you stored those files. You can choose any arbitrary tile on this map and go to material, change the base color to an image texture, and set it to the albedo or the set it to the albedo texture, which is usually denoted with an underscore A or an underscore D. So if we go into view material view, you can see that this is textured. And if we go into shading, you want to copy this image node and do the same for the metallic. Just drag the color property to that of the principal BSDF. Oh, one thing, very important. The textures that have common in their name are for the special terrain features, and some of these some tile sets will have even more textures, and you can typically find out where to go if you look at a map preview of that tile set in game. And this is a skybox texture that we'll use in Unity. But anyway, go back to here. We have our image nodes for the albedo, the metallic. You want to do the same for the normal map. And the emission. Occasionally, you need to bump up the emission to actually see things, such as on the Yerag tile set. But here is not particularly relevant. So once you textured one element, a standard element actually, hit A to select everything, Control L, then link materials. So this will apply that material to everything on a map. They messed up the normal. That was not it either. Okay. Just ignore that. It'll be fine in Unity. So anyway, that material of that single piece you just textured will be applied to everything. No, this is the correct tile set. For some reason, it just looks like that. Anyway, the reason why I recommended earlier to use Shift D to duplicate objects is that, unlike if you Control C, Control V, linked materials will be duplicated, and we do not want that. We want everything to be using the same materials. So anyway, for the special tiles, this would just be an example. You'll select everything. You'll select other tiles that are just like it, then select that one you just textured, and once again, link materials. You have to make sure you add the material. But yeah, and then you link materials, and they'll all be sharing the same material. And anyways, you just hit File, Export, and File, Export, and export as an FBX. Onto the Blender part, the Unity part. So on Zootlab, the releases are on the right side. They are regularly updated, and you just go to releases and click on the file that you want to download. And using that Unity package, you'll make well, first, you make a new Unity project. I am using Unity 2021.3.29 F1 Personal. Other versions may work, but I have not tested it out myself. So, before dragging the Unity package into your project, go to Package Manager and make sure post-processing is installed. If you do not know how to do that, press this tab here, go to Unity Registry and type in post-process in the search bar, and it'll show up and you can install that. And once that's done, you can drag the Unity package in here and a little menu will appear, which then you can just import everything, and you should have this. You'll have the example map project. So I don't have the example map in this project, but it should look something like a chapter 15 stage. But anyway, say that pretending that this FBX file here is the one that you just exported from Blender. You want to go to your inspector and go to model. If you do not change the scale of the map in Blender, then set the scale factor to 100. Otherwise, just leave it as 1 if you already resized it by 100 times in Blender. But anyways, go to materials and make sure that import via material description is enabled for material creation mode, and for location, use embedded materials. And you'll see the reason why we linked materials earlier is because we're left with a very few amount of material inputs for our map. So for example, this map, it has a input for the regular tiles, the grass decoration, and the special tiles. Occasionally, some tile sets will have like transparent floors. So if that ever comes up, you can simply give in you can simply in Blender give those floors their own material so that you can use a transparent material. As for the materials themselves, I'll use these as an example. So we have the albedo texture using this, which is denoted with _d, like as it was mentioned before. There's a normal map, a emissive texture, and there should be a there should be a metallic. Yeah, here it is. There is a metallic. For transparent materials with transparency, I prefer to use fade, and I like to set in the render queue. I like to set that to transparent -1, so 2999 in this input. And for the the opaque materials, you can simply set that at 2000. Should be it for the map. Alright, okay, so what is a map without enemies? So enemies are a fun one. We'll use these as examples actually. So take this collapsal guy. So the enemies, they obviously travel around the map, but how do they actually work? So the enemies here, under enemies, There are lots of them. Most of them serve as templates or reference points on how to set up your own. So going down the inspector, the scale of the enemy usually hovers between 0.20 to 0.35, but most enemies you work with will work with between like 0.24 to 0.3. This soldier, for example, is 0.8. Some occasionally you'll see a negative symbol for the X scale. This is simply for if you want to have them face a certain direction when they spawn. But anyway, yeah. And these sit outside the map. Don't put these models in the map. They just sit out here and they'll be cloned when they're spawned in. But anyways, important thing, under the skeleton animation script, you'll see a skeleton data asset. And if you click here, you'll see that they have a skeleton data asset. And this is basically their model. It contains all their animations. Look at them go. Go back to the enemy. There's also a material in the mesh renderer. And as if you wanted to replace this skeleton animation, you click on this little target icon, and you can just kind of choose whatever model you want. But you have to make sure to change the material as well. And then you press reload to reload the model. As for getting enemy models, here's a fun one. So we can go into any enemy page on the Arknights Terra wiki, and using their code or their simplified Chinese name, you'll go into PRTS and paste that into the search bar. It'll bring up their page. Usually it'll bring up, like, if you use their name, it'll bring up the regular one a lot of the time. But if you use their code, you'll actually get a more accurate result. But anyways, press F12 to open up your inspector and head over to the network tab. When you click on that blue button, you will see 3 files show up here: a skeleton, atlas, and a texture file. Download all 3 of these. Well, I already have that. So once you have those files downloaded, basically, I actually have this enemy in here. Where did I put you? Okay, so you'll have the skeleton file, the atlas file, and the PNG file. And down here you'll see this is atlas.txt. You'll want to append .txt to the end of the atlas file's extension. I'd specifically append, don't replace the extension, you have to append it. And for the skeleton file, append.json to it. And you can leave the texture file as it is. And once you have these 3 files in your file explorer, you can drag them into Unity, and it'll generate the atlas.asset, the material.mat, and the skeleton data.asset. If this doesn't work, if dragging in the atlas.text, skeleton.json, and the texture file, if dragging those 3 in to Unity does not work, that most likely means that you need to re-import the spine software, the model software for Unity, which I will have linked in the description. But it's version 3.8 that this project uses, and you'll basically download the Unity package for that off of their site and import that by just dragging it in here and going through the steps. But anyway, yeah, you should have your model after dragging these three in. If sometimes there'll be artifacts on the body parts, and you can hit straight off a texture and it'll fix it. This particular example does not have that issue. So anyway, back to the enemies. We see how they work exactly. So there's an animate script. This contains all their animations. Under skeleton animation, under animation name, you can view the names of their animation. And you want to make sure that your enemies have at least an idle, move, and die animation. Well, die is not no, actually, never mind. They'll have it idle, move, and die animation. Occasionally they'll have more, but you always want to have these three around. And make sure they're named after how they appear in the animation name drop down. Some enemies, like good old Ichthanir, has multiple animations for a particular action. So he has move A and move B. I want him to use move A, so I'll put move A in the move animation. Some enemies, such as Free, I don't have his model here, have different phases, such as a first phase death or like first phase transition. So you could do something like put his death animation as revive 01 and phase start animation as like revive 01, and that will let down the line when we go over waypoints, there will be an option to allow mobs to change phase. And basically what that does is it forces their death animation and then their phase start animation. It's something like that. It's been a while since I've actually used it. Might actually streamline that down the line. Anyway, enemy script. So there's movement speed divided by 2. Simply input their movement speed divided by 2. Accelerates makes them act like a Sarkaz Lancer. They'll accelerate over time up to a maximum movement speed. Spawns minions will give you a list of minions that you can make them spawn. I believe they spawn all enemies at once for now, but they have a minion spawn interval, which is the interval between spawning minions. Initial cooldown is the cooldown from which they spawn before they can start spawning minions. And spawn delay, they will spawn an enemy during their skill animation, and spawn delay determines when during that skill animation the minion will be spawned. As for health bar, maximum health value, you can set their max health. For now, this is only useful if you have the active Orogenium tiles, which makes enemies bleed to death. But besides that, it's not really relevant. Sphere Collider, most of the time you won't touch this, but this is just their hitbox. So if you have like a really big enemy for some reason, and you really wanted them to have a giant hitbox, be my guest. Mess around with that. But 1.5 works for the majority of cases. Oh, and enemies do have a shadow. In older versions of Zootlab, the far clip plane might be set to like 100. You want to set that to like 1 to 2, depending. Anyway, waypoints. Actually, before we get to waypoints, I should talk about the utility. So in the utility script, there is the adjust time script that adjusts the time scale. It's the equivalent of the 2x button from Arknights, except you can change it before and after playing. You can speed up time while this map is playing out. You can set it up to maximum of 10 or like minimum of 1. The background music, there's an intro and there's a loop. If you don't have an intro, you just put something in a loop and it'll play it. Audio files are found in resources, and then usually should be around there somewhere. I can't find anything right now, but there's lots of ways to find Arknights audio. But anyway, default contains the default camera. Basically, don't you don't really need to change anything in this. If you really do want to change the position of the camera, then just edit the Y to make it move up and down, or Z to make it move back and forth. X moves it side to side. And these are post-processing. It just makes the it does what you'd expect. Post-processing. If your PC can't handle it, I would not recommend using this. But this is the reason why we added the post-processing script earlier. There are a bunch of lights. These light up the map. These are pretty map specific, so more often than not, you'll be deleting them from the example map. I use point lights and directional lights. Directional lights act like a sun. They shine everywhere, and they shine in a particular direction. This is a particular direction. This is good for shining objects in a certain way, so like shadows go in a certain direction. Point lights shoots light from a point. I don't have much to say for that. The PCSS light script is a script that it's a plugin, it's a package that it just improves shadow quality. I don't think there's much. I don't think it strains the computer much, but I'm not very sure about that. Yeah. Oh, I forgot to say that if you want to open up the example map, just double click on this example map.unity. And as for dragging your map, you just drag in the model like this and set the position to 0, 0, 0. Anyway, waypoints. So waypoints are fairly simple. The spawner script, spawn point is where enemies spawn. The enemy is the game object of the enemy model. Hui Ming, it's just who is real stuff. It's just residual stuff that I haven't really figured out where to put. But anyway, spawn times is a list of enemies. They'll spawn at these times in seconds at 1 speed. So for example, this will spawn Igdanir at 42 seconds. Enemies will travel from one waypoint to the next in whatever order you want. You can reuse waypoints. These are the waypoint objects. They sit on the map. They sit they also sit like slightly lower on the tile because that's where like enemies usually walk in game. Drone waypoints, they sit 0.75 to 1 tile off the ground. But anyway, going back to this, so as you can see here that there's a stop, that's how long they'll stop at a particular waypoint when reaching it. Phase makes them do their phase transition if they have any. They'll go through their like death animation, then revive. Stairs, For example, on waypoint 1, that has the stairs, and we want them to go to 2 through those stairs. So we'll check stairs. That will make them teleport to the next waypoint. Stairs duration is 1, so that stairs duration is the duration they are inside the stairs and how long they'll be invisible until they reappear at the next set of stairs. So going to 1, they'll wait for 1 second, they'll pop out at 2, they'll go to 3, and so on and so forth. And at every checkpoint, you can set new animations for them. Yeah. You just click this plus and minus sign to remove and add checkpoints. So, for example, if we hit play, you can see this Tiakura warrior champion. He's doing his thing. Anyway, if we go into the utility. Utility is a fun one. This is where the red boxes, the red boxes, the blue boxes, and the aerial incursion drone boxes are. Red and blue boxes, they typically they are offset 0.5 tiles off the ground. So if your boxes are inside the ground, you can just move them up. And there is a snap function in Unity, so make sure to use that. It will make your life a lot easier. There is a active Originium. It's a tile, you just place that in the ground. Enemies walk over it, they'll get the debuff. They'll bleed out over time. Nothing much to say about that. Oh, that reminds me. Enemy health bars. So enemy health bars will become invisible if they start losing HP. We go to utility. You want to make sure that orange cam and white cam are on the same position, same position, XYZ position as default. That way that way the health bars will render in the correct place. Oh, that should be most. That should be most of it. Let's see. Yep, that should cover everything. Thank you for watching, and have fun. Good luck.